Hey everyone, welcome back to the Mermaid Mystic channel, in which we are exploring the major arcana this month. Our next card on our learning adventure is the Hermit. So you know the drill. This is a tutorial video. If you want to take notes, pause the video, get your note-taking material. Otherwise, I'm diving right into the meaning of this card. So what do we see here? We see a lone figure. We see no city, no buildings, no nothing. They're standing on snow. They've got this gray robe. The hood is up. They're leaning on a staff. They have a beard and they have a lantern. So what does it all mean? So firstly, with a slightly kind of grayish blue background, no buildings in sight, we have the gray robe. There's this energy of being betwixt and between. If you remember the card, the High Priestess, that was a figure sat between a black pillar and a white pillar. So that's this idea of the unseen world and the seen world, the spiritual, the material, the conscious, the subconscious. We get these kind of polarities that are really meant to be a whole, right? And here we've got this kind of merging of them. So the Hermit often shows up when we're in a sense of in between. We're in a sense of betwixt and between. So we might be like leaving some things behind, but we haven't quite yet arrived at where we're going to be arriving. The Hermit is the journey of that. The Hermit is the journey of discovering what we're leaving behind and what truth we are really discovering. Now, the Hermit, I find, has a more spiritual and magical lens than I find a lot of people write about, with these energies of betwixt and between. So think about betwixt and between times and places as like dawn, dusk, midnight, and the crossroads. These are all times and places that across multiple practices and cultures and traditions are seen as times and places of power. This is where you are more likely to perhaps meet spirits, for better or worse. That will depend on the tradition. There are also places where your spells might be more powerful. So in the Hermit, we do have this sense of magical power. I like to think about the figure Gandalf. Bear with me. I love Lord of the Rings. If you haven't seen Lord of the Rings, Gandalf is a wise older wizard who walks around with a staff. Now, this is largely because J.R.R. Tolkien was so influenced by Norse mythology. That's a whole other thing that's really cool and interesting to dive into. But we do have this good idea of this figure who's wandering Middle Earth in order to dispense wisdom. So the Hermit, we can see there's no buildings. So there is really this message. You could view it as isolation, or you could just really view it as your own path, your own journey. Because what we're really doing in the Hermit is we're developing our wisdom with our beard and our staff based on our life experiences and spiritual studies. Gandalf, again, returning to Gandalf, has this wisdom, has this life experience, and so can travel from village to village or whatever, dispensing wisdom. I think what's really important to notice is that here, like going back to Gandalf in this time of the Hermit, you are a little bit apart from regular society. But Gandalf isn't looking down on regular society. Quick vent. I find sometimes in spiritual practices, if you meet a writer or a teacher who talks about people as sheep or looks down on other people, I'd run for the hills. Because ideally, as a spiritual practitioner, there's no universe in which you view yourself above anyone or anything. Sure, maybe you would have high moral expectations of yourself, but you don't think you're better. You view people as part of the collective that we're meant to serve. So just saying that. So Gandalf is a little bit separate from communities, but still is a part of them in his own way and also is of service to them. So here in the Hermit, returning to Gandalf, we are taking ourselves outside of society in a manner of speaking. We are pulling ourselves out of the conditioning that has brought us up, the illusions, the stories, and you start to really understand that we've just absorbed stories. We make all of these kind of like accidental agreements all the time. A great example is social media. You might be scrolling and you see a statistic and you just believe it. And you just like absorb it. And then you assume it's the truth. So what we're doing here with the Hermit, this betwixt and between, is we're starting to realize that as humans, we're like spongy and we sponge up energies and we sponge up stories, other people's ideas about what life is. And we're going to turn to our life experience with our beard to be like, that's actually not very true for me. Why did I believe that? And you start to question the things that you have not been questioning. And sometimes that does mean you're going to have to be like, I don't care if everyone thinks XYZ, what's true for me is ABC. And you just let that be your truth. You don't force your truth on other people. We all have different stories that are going to be the most healing for us and the most of service to us. So here in the Hermit, we're pulled away, we're taking ourselves out of, that could be family, that could be culture, that could be society, whatever it is, to connect to your soul, to connect to your own truth. Now, the Hermit, the High Priestess, and the Hierophant are all a little bit linked. They're all spiritual guides in some capacity, whether in the material world or the spiritual world. Now, the Hierophant, I would say, is the material world. We saw those stone pillars. We saw the fancy robe, right? We know it's Taurus. But the Hermit may be a guide who is outside of, like Gandalf, outside of any kind of institution. So the Hierophant, and the Hierophant can be a really wonderful, powerful teacher, but again, they're probably going to be teaching something that has to do with rites that have been passed down from a number of different people. In their culture, in their practice, there's going to be the sense of tradition. The Hermit might be a bit more off the beaten path. The figure like Obi-Wan Kenobi in Star Wars, in 77, New Hope, that Obi-Wan Kenobi, who's like this like nice, wise, mystical old man who's like outside of regular society. And really, and then that light of spirit is you're letting the light of spirit guide you. You're letting this sense of what's true for you, again, without having to enforce it on other people or make it some sort of like ultimate truth, because that's where humans get into a bit of trouble. But you're following this kind of like the soul, the thing that feels really right for you that guides you. And when you do connect to your inner sense of truth, your inner sense of wisdom, your inner sense of integrity, then you are not lost. You're never lost. The staff is indeed another symbol of life experience that you can lean on. It's there to support you as you're like, oh my God, what's real? You have support here. Other cool thing with the staff, which again reminds us the Hermit could very well be a powerful spiritual practitioner, is staffs are used again in a number of different practices as magical tools that wield power. So this figure is like, yeah, they're on their own. They're pulling themselves out of ordinary society. They're reflecting on what's really true for them. And they might be doing this with a guide. So the Hermit, while the Hermit is the Hermit, this is suggesting that you're pulling away from people. You might need some time to relax. You need some time to go within. You don't need other voices right now. You really need to connect to your own voice. You still might need a teacher to help you to do this. And then that would be like the Hermit. That's probably going to be a teacher who's like marching to the beat of their own drum. Alternatively, you might be this teacher, right? In both the Hierophant and the Hermit, you could be the taught or you could be the teacher, but usually you'll find like we're both many times throughout life. So the last thing, again, with the hood up, if you were to wear a cloak and you got a hood up, if you've ever done it, I have, it's really fun. You do feel like the energies have shifted a bit. You feel like you're in a place of magic. You feel like you are taking yourself out of ordinary reality to a degree. So once again, that hood up is suggesting we're kind of like blocking out external influences so that we can focus on our own path. And indeed, the gaze of the Hermit is down on their own path. We're not worried about what other people are saying, thinking, doing. We are really taking time to get to know ourselves, to release illusions or stories or attachments that are not in alignment with our truth, and to discover and feed and strengthen our truth. Okay, my friends, thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed this video. Next one up is going to be the Wheel of Fortune. See you soon.